In Bangladesh, tell me, what is the current situation? Will elections take place in February or not? Why would Yunus hold it? He's enjoying power without any accountability. But does he want to hold elections? And what are the constituents now? What are left of the political parties out there? Do you see, the BNP playing a major role in the next election if it is held?
Good to be here, Smita, on your
Thank
podcast, and great to chat with you always.
Can I call you Tino after this, please?
Please.
For viewers and listeners, I'm not being disrespectful to my guest. I know Dr. Xavier for a long time and I call him Tino. So henceforth in the show, if I call you Tino, I hope you don't mind.
Please do. Smita, I think first a moment of silence for all those good souls that believed that Yunus was actually going to reform Bangladesh, bringing an era of democracy, of prosperity. I think those souls maybe were optimistic, they were hopeful. We heard their voices between August and November, December last year, 2024, up to early 25. And I think there's been a reality check now. And that's a good thing. I'm a realist. I think we have to look at things how they are. There was a lot of enamorment with Yunus, particularly from the West. Let's not forget that he came into power with Biden still in the White House, with the West supportive of his agenda, including of what he at some point promised to be 4 years of reforms, new constitution, new electoral system. That shifted very quickly. And I'd say that now we're in a place, to your question, does he still, is he committed to the elections? I think he's realized that the only way out for him, politically and actually also literally in some ways, is to hold elections and to leave with this medal saying, I have held the country together for 1.5 2 years. I've held elections. I got a charter through that will be validated through a referendum that is going to be held in parallel to the February election. Whether that referendum is going to lead to something significant or not, we don't know. But it's a smooth exit plan for this cast of characters that has shown up from nowhere, really, and disillusioned itself, I think, quite quickly, fortunately, with the reality on the streets that, is very different from what Yunus and his advisors think.
So is the street now accepting of the fact that Yunus will leave and they will have an election?
I think the street never recognized in that sense Yunus as a long-term solution. But it was the BNP who certainly saw him as a transient individual that was going to hold elections sooner rather than later. The BNP always pushed for elections. The Jamaat, for example, I don't think recognized in him the leader of the Bangladesh that the Jamaat Islami wanted and still wants. The army was never, I think, particularly supportive of Yunus, gave him time, give his interim government some time. But in March, this year, when the army chief Akar came out and pretty much, signaled very clearly, you better hold these elections sooner rather than later. That was the tipping point, I think, for me, where we realized that, Yunus was there for as long as he could be, and he wanted to be, but eventually...
So he wasn't going to be a Karzai, in the sense that imposed by America and, kind of stayed on for a long time, made himself a part of the polity.
See, the point is, did he have the power to do what he was saying? Right? Did he... a new constitution, right, for example, without elections. That's initially what his agenda was, a new electoral system. He never had that power. And if you're in the business of politics, you know that. Every relevant Bangladeshi political actor knew that he was at best a very short-term figure. And that's exactly what has unraveled, I think, over the year. And now we're finally having the elections, which are the condition for a normalization, where you'll see the emergence of a new, legitimately elected government that will have the power of voters on its side to then do what it wishes to do.
So will Awami League participate in the election? BNP would want it to be, because that will lend credibility to the election. Without Awami League participating, with just the BNP and maybe the Jamaat and some student leaders forming some kind of setup, does it have credibility if Awami League is not part of the election?
Difficult one, Smita, because this depends first who is the Awami League today and who is the BNP. And I think no one is really sure.
Why? What's wrong with the BNP?
the BNP has different factions within it.
Okay.
You know, when I was in Dhaka recently, there are different people saying very different things about what Bangladesh they want, what the relationship with India should be. Sheikh Hasina, to the point now about who is the Awami League. We have someone sitting here in Delhi still assuming that she is, in effect, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh and that what has happened since August last year, 24, is not legitimate. Now, that makes it very difficult for the Awami League to move on. Forget now what it's allowed to do or not. I spoke to several of MPs from the Awami League who are in exile now. They're telling that within the party there is confusion. And there are people who certainly say this is an era where we need to move on as a party. She's part of the past. Whether she's done crimes or not is a larger discussion, but she's certainly not going to be part of the solution of a new Awami League going forward. These are the debates we don't hear so much about. They're, of course, internal, tough, painful debates. And you know, it's your leader, after all, that was in power for 15 years. And a leader that made the party herself. We know towards the last few years of rule, Sheikh Hasina was very isolated, right? Her party became weak from a sense of strong figures, like you're asking for second-rank figures that could take over now. So it's very difficult to do all this within a year with you being persecuted, with MPs literally being attacked, as you know, in Bangladesh and abroad and being slapped with cases. They're reconstituting their families, their well-being. And the party is in disarray, but we have her, of course, still operating as the leader, which complicates it. So I think, obviously, for a free and fair election, the Awami League should technically, every party should be allowed to run.
Right.
But look at it also from the Bangladeshi perspective. The Awami League has to pay some type of price
Yes.
for what it did. And it may have not done as much as it's being accused of. But, you know, there's a nice expression, which you sit this one out.
Okay.
You know, maybe the Awami League needs to rethink a little bit, you know, itself, how it wants to position itself. And I think there will be that space. Now, there's two problems with that. One is, as you see over the last few weeks, the Awami League is trying to push the conditions to be re-assimilated into Bangladesh. So it is making a lot of noise, right? It is criticizing, it is, you know, operating again in Bangladesh. We see, you know, some movements there. So the Awami League is trying now to carve out its space again and saying, fine, we may not realistically run the election or even recognize it, but we want to be part after February of as soon as possible, right? Because otherwise you may remain banned forever, right? To your point about, I'm not sure if the BNP is very interested to bring the Awami League in, right? Because the question is, what will happen to the, let's say, different estimates, 20 to 30% of the electorate that the Awami League holds in Bangladesh? Will that transfer to the BNP? Will it transfer to the Jamaat? Different versions? Will people stay at home and not vote? Right? So, but certainly if the Awami League would run, that vote would be a significant vote. Maybe not as large as we think, but 10 to 20% is significant if you want to form the majority, which is why the BNP wants to hold elections as soon as possible.
Namaste, Jai Hind. You're watching ANI podcast with Smita Prakash.
अगर हम उसको मस्जिद कहेंगे तो फिर विवाद होगा।
The issue is टूटा है क्या भारत?
400 पार का मतलब ये है कि संविधान खतरे में है।
क्या हम लोग ये निर्देश देते हैं कि फला को गिरफ्तार करके जेल डाल दें?
वही तो कह रहे हैं सब।
ये बेबुनियाद निराधार आरोप।
सच्चा सुनना चाहो देखो स्मिता प्रकाश ANI, it does not lie.